So today on the Neil Wilkins podcast, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Lillian Pierson. Now, Lillian is the author of a groundbreaking new book called The Data and AI Imperative, Designing Strategies for Exponential Growth. Now, we're going to talk about AI. We're definitely going to talk about data. But we're also going to go into some other things in terms of growth strategy. We're going to look at how you can work with technologists and many, many more things. And with over 20 years of experience in the field, nobody's better qualified than Lillian to lead us and guide us on this journey. So welcome, Lillian, to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Neil. You're quite a gracious host. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Oh, you're very kind. And I guess I've built this up into being quite something. I mean, they're saying, 20 years experience, knows everything about AI. Well, I didn't say knows everything about AI, but I kind of intimated that you're super
You were pretty generous.
So I've set the bar quite high for this one because, of course, there is no playbook, is there? This is the challenge we're all facing with AI.
Well, it depends on, I wouldn't say there's no playbook. I would say it just depends on what you're trying to achieve. So the book that I wrote, The Data and AI Imperative, it really would be a playbook for building a data or AI strategy for business growth. Very, very clearly, like a manual for how to build a strategy that's like low risk, high reward. But there's so many different ways you could apply AI for growth that it's kind of like, that's only one avenue. You see what I'm saying? You could look at other avenues as well, and there's very, very much uncharted territory.
Yeah, and I guess this is where really everybody's kind of tussling with this. I mean, you can be very, very experienced business owner or marketer who's kind of been there, seen it, done it, decades of experience, and then suddenly this new kid on the block arrives. And I know we've had AI, in various kind of formats and guises for a long, long time. But from a business perspective, it's only recently, really over the last sort of 24 months, that we've started to realize that these are a set of tools and technologies that we can actually embrace and integrate within our businesses at a really personal kind of level. But people are still kind of fearful over that change because of, I guess, all of the unknowns. Is that something that you've seen in your work?
Because I work in the data and AI industry for over a decade, I honestly, everyone is kind of on the edge. Everyone is kind of on the leading edge of data and AI. So I don't see a lot of that fear. But I will say I have seen with other fractional executives, it depends on the industry. So if they're in banking or if they're in an industry that's got these security regulations, it's just like you have to design around that. So if certain industries, people are more concerned, even data strategists are more concerned about using any type of AI. They're very worried, but there's measures you can put in place to protect yourself, and all both light measures and then also like enterprise grade measures for leveraging generative AI to get that tremendous increase in efficiency without risking your data being leaked to the cloud, kind of things. I'm happy to talk to you about that if you're interested.
Yeah, 100%. I think for a lot of people, it is about that practicality of, we all know ChatGPT can create some lovely, masterful words for us to put into our social posts and stuff, but we're not kind of going to go at that surface level. I think we do need, for many people's benefit, to go that few steps deeper into, I think you're kind of, sort of hinting there that this is very much about process. This is about understanding the systems in your business and then maybe starting to leverage something like an AI tool, if we just call it that, or a technology that can enable an efficiency, if it's appropriate, that can help us to do things in more effective ways, if also that's appropriate. But I think for a lot of us, we're kind of very mindful that we've got very precious, well, let's call it data. We might have customer records, we might have financial performance, and we don't want to just let that out into the real world and almost kind of release it to the public because it's obviously sensitive. Where do we even begin our thinking process in that regard?
It's actually quite challenging. That's a great question because I think about it myself. The issue is, the problem is that there's such a race in these these technology companies to be on the leading edge of AI, that everyone is adding these AI features. Like inside of Google, they want you to use Gemini. Inside of Canva, like I was approved for their pilot program, their AI pilot program. But then they wanted, and then I realized, yeah, they're gonna take the data, and Adobe, they actually did take the data, take the people's media rights, and like basically tried to hijack and say, we're taking IP rights to this. And it's very hard to, I would say, like, I'm not a data privacy expert, and it is very tricky, honestly, because there's this AI is being built into all the applications we're using. So how do you protect yourself against that? Like the Adobe people, do you know what I'm talking about? They couldn't protect themselves against that. Adobe just kind of did what they did. So I can give you some best practices, of course. I'll be happy to do that. But I'm saying that there's also like there's a margin of just like where this is the Wild West, and no one asked me when they took my Data Science for Dummies book and siphoned all the text out of it and monetized that data. They didn't ask me if that was okay with me, or they're not paying me. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like we can do what we can do to protect ourselves and our clients, but then there's things that are beyond our control.
Do you think it's time? I mean, let's just talk about this kind of from a sort of very, very macro level here. I mean, do you think it's time that we, as maybe if we call ourselves thought leaders or podcast hosts or marketers or business owners, that we start to really actively lobby a regulator or regulators or our governments or our local kind of representatives to be able to start to really properly think about this stuff? Because it's important, isn't it? The only way currently that this stuff can be developed is that it will actually scrape data that's existing, because it's machine learning. That is the definition of it. So it needs to learn from something. It can't learn from sort of fake information. It'll be learning from stuff that's in the public domain. And for most of us, that is our IP. It's our blogs, it's our videos, it's our books, from your perspective. Should we really be making more of a noise about this?
Gosh, that's the question. Okay, one good thing about Europe is that they are more proactive. So they started this EU AI Act, where they're actually is kind of as tough as like GDPR, where they're actively like, you have to disclaim. They've put in protections for people who reside in Europe, and I think those help. But like the bigger question here is like, okay, is it worth it? Should we stand up against this? And like I could actually give you some links to AI safety newsletters, like a newsletter by an expert that I am subscribed to. He's great, but I think the fundamental issue is there's two things. One is it for the greater good? It's for the greater good, or can we stop it? If we don't do it, China's going to do it. China's already doing it. Is it for the greater good? Like, okay, they didn't pay me for the book rights or whatever, but is it for the greater good? So long as it's not an existential crisis coming, I think that this is definitely for the greater good. So the second issue then becomes like what a lot of times with technologies. Okay, so this is a little bit hearsay because I'm not a total history buff, but a good friend of mine who's an attorney explained to me how it works with, I think it was Edison. So if the technology is for the greater good and companies are monetizing like crazy and they have like a monopoly, at a certain point, like governments can actually just make this like, okay, this is public domain. It's possible. This is public domain here, so you don't get to have like a patent over this, and they take the patent rights away, and they like just say this is for the public good. This is, you know what I'm saying? So that was probably a long-winded, indirect answer, but I haven't actually signed anything say like AI safety bills myself, just because I don't think it's actually going to make any difference at all because of the financial interests, corporations. There's too much money and there's too much competition. And Russia, China, they're all going to do it anyway. So what's the point?
Does it mean then that if that's a really good point, and I think for a lot of us we are thinking about this stuff because inevitably it's going to impact us if it already hasn't. I mean, do you think then what we should be doing is more kind of just being really conscious about the kinds of data, content, information that we're currently sharing? Because it's a really interesting one, isn't it? That a lot of us are just posting content out there. Obviously you have a number of books, and you do a lot of kind of work in this area, which is going to be in the public domain. Obviously, I got this podcast and a variety of other kind of assets that I'm releasing, and suddenly we're realizing actually these are no longer under our control or under our protection. They are literally released into the wild, and they're available in various kind of guises for everyone. Do you feel it kind of just makes us having to be just more conscious? And like you say, if it's for the greater good, it's kind of okay, maybe. But for some of us, we have IP that we need to, because of financial reasons, we need to protect. But that wouldn't be okay to share, would it?
No. Yeah. I mean, in certain cases, yeah, you just have to be really, I would probably hire a data privacy expert to look into this type of thing and to build a strategy around that, because it's its own, like if you have IP, yeah, you just have to be super, super secure. And I'm a little skeptical, I've got to say, because everything has AI built into it. It's like you cannot get away from, no matter where you look, every application has got, like, they want to get more data. They want to have their generative AI products running, and they're probably running them and not telling us. So what do? I think you just take proactive measures to CYA. Like, okay, redacting things helps, like redacting things. But if it's IP, like serious IP, like a SaaS product, like code for a software product, stuff like that, I mean, that would need its own strategy, its own strategic approach. But I would not be too afraid of, like, you're looking at two sets of risks. You're looking at the risk of, like, okay, someone takes our IP and releases it into the wild, or like some security risk, which these are valid. But the other side of the coin is that, and this is a big one, if you're not using AI, they're getting left behind. Big time. And I think that's the bigger risk, in all honesty, because I don't know how long we can even keep up, but like, at least so I've got children, I want to provide for them. So like, I don't know how long humans will even be able to keep up before they have to come with this universal basic income, because AI has like really automated most everything. But in the meantime, I still want to have gainful a way to make money, right? So I mean, it's just incredible what you can do, how much you can get done. And if you're not, everyone else, it's like a race. So I think that's a pretty big risk to sit in fear and not take action. So like, you just kind of have to decide one way or another. But I don't think sticking your head in the sand is a very good move, unfortunately. And when ChatGPT first came out, I was scared. And some of the times when I see these things, like, Vid, my movie trailer, wow, I put in a whole script from what I got from ChatGPT. I just like make a trailer script, and I wasn't actually easy after I got in there, but I just dumped the whole script into this little box like this big. You couldn't even read it. It was like all the way across, and press run, and it spit out this trailer video that was like as good as like a cinema, as what you get like Hollywood. And it was spot on with everything, all the scenes, everything. And it was like 90 seconds later with captions. It's just like, even my husband, who's a developer, who's very much like not afraid of AI and not worried, he was even like, yeah. So
Yeah, and it is this kind of, I guess, constant juggling between the risk and reward, as you say. Commercially, competitively, we can't ignore it, even though some of us might want to. We have to embrace at least an understanding of the possibilities, all the way through to then I'm going to jump straight in. I'm going to fully immerse myself in this. We're going to reinvent or even pivot our business as a result of this, and we're just going to release everything into the wild. And it's, of course, it's risk and reward. If you see a
Crazy.
commercial reward, it's great, but actually it is, as you say, it's that protection of your assets, of your IP, of your overall
Okay, so
business that's also important.
I can give you an idea because I worked with a company. I did like a product market fit hypothesis for a company. It was a local AI. And they were building, so basically what local AI is, it's like a little sub niche within generative AI, and you download their application. And then when you download their application, you download the latest version of whatever model you want to use for generative AI. And then you run it on your machine. So that data doesn't actually ever get sent back to, OpenAI or whoever, whatever, like if you're using Claude, Anthropic, right? The data doesn't actually make it back. And so, so that's great for an individual. If you're like worried about, like as like a solopreneur, if you're worried about data privacy in that way, you could do that. But you won't be able to use GPTs, I don't think. But if you have like a banking industry, like a bank, like a whole business unit, where you can actually stand up a cluster of you can stand up a cluster, and so basically you can build on-prem applications for running these models within your environment so that it's secure and that data isn't actually being sent out. So that was one of the things I was like, wow, like that was one of the things I was like, you guys should really go after this market and like finding the customer personas for who they should talk to. I enjoyed that because I was like, this is a huge need. Like other company like Bloomberg, they built their own built their own large language model, and it didn't actually turn out so well for them. It's not the best idea in general to try and do that. It hasn't turned out so well for a lot of really, really great big companies, So that's one way you can go about securing either personal data or actually enterprise-wide data.
So do you feel, I mean, just kind of strategically, do you feel an organization would miss out from being, I guess, connected in with the bigger picture? So, let's just say ChatGPT, because obviously everybody's aware of it. That balance of, kind of knowledge, information, the amount of stuff it's learned over the last couple of years, for example, and all of the value you're going to get, rather than like a sort of a ring-fenced version where, it's super safe, but actually it's limited in its capacity to, let's call it, think outside the box. I mean, is that something that people need to decide upon?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. But I think there's so many people innovating. So most of the investment money is going towards AI startups right now. There's so many people innovating. So what I say, like, okay, you can always, so if you download local AI application, you can always get the updates. You can always download the newest model because it's connected to the APIs. So you're not gonna like lose that capability or that feature unless they no, I mean, I don't think they're going to take that away. And there's so many of them that's just something you could always do. But then there's other features and functionalities that these companies are building out that you don't get access to when you do that, like the GPTs. But I would say that, like, okay, I haven't looked at the local AI market for about 6 months. I haven't been, working in that sub niche. But I'm sure that there's developers that are going to build their own GTP-like thing that you can run locally. So I think it's just a matter of time, just like there's so much money pouring in for development that like someone's going to build it.
And that would feel to me, so if I'm a business owner and I'm kind of sitting there thinking, okay, Lillian, that sounds like a good option. well, what are the kind of things I'm going to be doing with that if I am running things locally? I mean, we'll come on to the kind of the biggest stuff in a moment, but just from a local perspective, okay, so I've got my medium-sized business. Yeah, there's some sensitive data within it. I don't want my performance data or my forecasting because we're in a really competitive sector. So kind of all my data is really high value in terms of its worth within the business.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of things can I be using something like that for?
If you had it installed locally, yes, that's okay. You could use it for decreasing your time for market research. I haven't actually played that much with the local AI, so I wonder about the references. So like ChatGPT is great for like in Perplexity. A lot of the LLMs have internet access, and so it's incredible for decreasing time for market research, so that you can get your customer personas and really define great markets, and you can get that done 10 times faster than ever before, and have credible data because it gets the links, right? But I don't know if how that works with local AI, in fact. So I'm sure that if it's an older data set, then they may say like where they pulled it from, and you would have to go check manually, but I can't speak on that point specifically. Other than that, what you can do, like say if you have GPTs, like one thing I love doing, if we had local GTPs, hey, someone out there, build it, local AI, like GTPs, we're like, you know what I mean, right? GTP. Yeah. So I bought this pack from a guy that I saw on LinkedIn, and you input your brand voice, you input your customer personas, you basically input your offers, some main staples, and then this thing. So he's got like several GTPs. One writes hooks, one writes LinkedIn posts, one will take a post if you want to like actually extract the copywriting framework. The framework, so you have the copyright, like extract so that you could actually reproduce that same successful post, but with like your own topics. But the quality of the copy is like the hooks, and it's so good. It's kind of like, it's so good. Like I think I'm a pretty good writer, but like this is, and it's the time. Like I just put my, post in there, and then like I have 10 great, hooks, right? Or like, it's so amazing. So then it's like, okay, if we could build GTPs locally, you could have, that would be like the most basic thing you could have. But what I really want to do is like take that and build upon it further, where we're actually like I'm using it to build like emails, blogs, and stuff like that. Ones that are really, really good, not like the kind of ones that come out. Then, everything needs to be humanized, of course. You don't want to, and fact checked and all of that. But there's so many different uses. I almost can't even begin. And like we're talking about, okay, so all the things we're talking about right now are just generative AI, but like I don't think most people don't realize that like AI is running in everything. So I've been using AI since like AI products since I went to law school. So I worked in a law office for a while, 2010 or 11. And he was doing dictation. So I learned like, dictation and listening to what you wrote to see if you found any typos. Been doing that for like a long time since then. That's all AI. All of that data is actually going, and you know what I'm saying? Maybe it's being processed locally, but I don't know. Is it being processed locally now? Like you'd have to look at the terms and conditions, and there's so much. It's like, it's almost like pointless to get afraid or worried. I would love to talk more about like efficiencies, because it's like mind blowing, the efficiencies you can create. It's like from working with clients, I see very, very like cutting edge tech companies, but like still not having defined and executed AI marketing strategies. There's like so much low hanging fruit that like I could go on, but I think
Well,
I talked a lot.
do, because I think for a lot of us, that is one of those things that once you get beyond, say, GPT for content creation, you're starting to think, hey, there's a load more in here. Kind of, and you open up the hood and it's like, wow, there's so many opportunities. And the one that often does shout the loudest is efficiency, is automation, is that kind of, doing stuff super quick and super efficient when a human takes forever. This thing can do it, within with an eye blink. So what are you seeing? Where are the main kind of use cases coming through for you?
Gosh, I do. I mean, I do everything with AI. Like, golly, because you can do the audio now. They've got advanced voice, so you can talk to the British accent lady, and so you can do online research. Like, I was looking for a literary agent. I didn't even know anything about literary agents, and like by the time I had gotten home, I already had names of, like, I'd already done a multi-criteria decision-making assessment and gotten the best names for the people that I should contact, and a template for, like, fill this out, like, complete this for your book, and then this is the way you should pitch them. So I didn't even, when I got in the car 30 minutes before, I didn't even know, like, how a literary agent could actually help me. And then, so it's like so many things. One of the cool things I'm seeing that I think would be interesting, especially for marketing people in media, is, like, say, this podcast. If you've seen CastMagic, have you seen CastMagic yet?
No.
Oh boy. Okay, well, they have a lifetime deal. I should really sign up to be an affiliate. They have a lifetime deal on AppSumo. And you might run out of credits, but I'm not going to run out of credits at, like, basically ever, like 600 minutes transcribed, right? So they've had it, but they've been improving, and they built this whole community. You take this video here, you run it through into CastMagic, and it basically, you can make your custom prompts and add your brand voice. And so, like, at first I thought, I don't like this product because it was just promotional copy, right? But now it's breaking out, like, the core quotes, all the, the basic things, a newsletter, promotional newsletter, like, all that stuff. But then you can create your own custom prompts where, okay, turn it into a carousel, or turn it into threads, or you can, the one I started doing that I thought was like, wow, this is really good, is, like, say we have 4 key points that we make during this discussion, right? Well, you say, okay, you identify the 4 key points discussed and make a blog post, a value add blog post about those separately. So a blog post for each one. So you can take this conversation and turn it into, like, 6 weeks of content, that it's not, like, purely promotional, that's actually, like, nurture value add content where the call to action is to come watch. So, and it's just, like, done pretty immediately. So it takes the heavy lift of, like, writing, but you still have to QA and operationalize. But there's just so many things. I mean, I could go on and on about the different tools. How can I help? How do you think that I can help the listeners the most? Like, what do they really need? Because I could really go on and on about the tools.
Yeah, I guess one of the areas, and I think you touched on it with the first example, which was great because it just really got me thinking about this whole kind of, let's use the word concierge kind of service that AI can provide. Because just the way you were describing that first example kind of just led me to think this is a business concierge, stroke life concierge, stroke personal learning concierge.
Oh,
With your example there, it was kind of,
everything.
it can do all of these things all at once, almost in an instant, can't it? So do you have
Holy goodness.
opportunities here to almost be creating? And again, I'm thinking of the marketing manager who's got a small team but never enough time. I'm
Yeah.
thinking of the business owner who hasn't got the resources or the depth of cash in the business to be able to recruit, but they need things to be done. It's kind of those, well, let's call them AI agents, I guess, which is the hot
Yeah,
phrase, isn't it, right
absolutely.
now?
A lot of my partners
What are
and
you
friends.
seeing?
Yeah, a lot of the startups that, like, I partner with and stuff, they actually have they call it, yeah, agentic marketing, where, yeah, you've got agents running and doing a lot of the heavy lifting. But I think for sure, definitely, like, the people you're talking about, like the marketing manager at a small company or business owners, like, Absolutely. I would be using AI for everything as soon as possible because it's someone else is going to be doing it. And also it's going to take it off your plate. And I really think that one of the bigger things, just because I use AI for everything all the time, so I get so much done. I let my team go like a year ago because I pivoted business models, and I just like, okay, and I was always paying a lot of money. I was like, okay, so I pivoted, and that's changing now. But like, so I'm in the position like like I never would have been able to do what I'm doing right now. One of the In terms of output, it doesn't just increase your volume of output, but also so long as you're checking everything and you're making sure, you're doing a human QA over the top, it improves quality as well, because we're like meat sticks, right? So, but the thing is that I think that at a certain point it requires personal boundaries, because the more we can do, that does like, then you just actually, okay, so I got more done. I got 10 times more done than I could ever do before. But then you feel this expectation that there's even more you should do. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't go, it's like almost like, what is that? What's that word? What is the saying? Like, something, I forget. There's a condition like someone who gets like they had some certain success or made so much money and then it's never enough. Conditioning, didactic conditioning or something, where basically you get an improvement and then you're like, okay, I need the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. I need to be faster. And it's very, very, what I found personally in myself is that like, I found that, and a lot of the people in my network are data professionals building these products, AI product managers, and we're all feeling it. It's like we produce 10 times more than we ever did before, and we always feel like it's not enough. So it's about like setting boundaries, because we see what's possible. You know what I'm saying? Like once you see what's possible, then you're like, oh crap.
It's almost the limitation of being human, isn't it? Do you know, this is the first time, Lillian, that I've actually heard that kind of mentioned, that there's almost like a new stress here coming through in terms of feeling limited by the capability of the AI, because the AI can just continually, exponentially perform at an even higher level every single day. We can't. We're human. We're kind of limited by that bandwidth and that processing power. That's a really interesting one. Do you see that kind of playing out in the future more broadly, just outside of the tech community? Because I could imagine it, as every time we use this stuff, it sets a new baseline, doesn't it, that we're then having to perform against. That expectation from a business owner looking at you, or your chief marketing officer saying, well, last month you created X amount. Well, this month I want X plus one.
Didactic.
Like,
I think it's didactic. What do you know what I'm talking? Didactic, where it's
that
always
sounds a
never
very
good
big
enough.
word, way behind my pay grade.
Okay,
But
it's like
I'll go with you on it.
didactic, something like thing. Okay, I'll tell you later. But yes, absolutely. So there is a solution to that, though. What I found, honestly, is I argue with ChatGPT. And like it'll say something, because you definitely can do these model hallucinations and it's like absolute rubbish. But sometimes there's some reasoning there that I didn't think about. And I actually, I asked ChatGPT to do because I honestly, with the amount of information that with AI and processing every day, that my brain I can't do that much reasoning in a day. So I actually use so this is covered in the book too, but what maybe people don't understand is that like AI is not just like the corpus of data. Like if you're using generative AI and large language models or image generators, they've got the corpus of data that they scraped, right? But then they've also got the reasoning engine. And these are two parts. And so the reasoning engine is the thing that's actually the most valuable. Yeah, it needs the data because it needs something to predict from in order to create the output, right? But the reasoning engine is so powerful that a lot of the way that I use AI is actually just for its reasoning. So, and I'll argue against it. And sometimes I'm like, after a while, I'm like, yeah, actually, okay, like it proved to me that that there was something I hadn't considered or wasn't aware of. And I look into it, and it's like, that's one of the things, is learning to tap into the reasoning engine and not just use it to write content or something like that, or to create images.
You
I think it's
said right
actually
at the
really
start.
powerful.
Yeah, you said right at the start that there were going to be one or two moments that were going to be, really, really kind of almost game changers. I think that's one, is that just that understanding the reasoning bit versus the data bit. It was not versus, because they work collaboratively, don't they? But the reasoning bit that you can just play with, again, as a business professional, the power strategically of that is immense, isn't it?
Yeah, and and it is a little bit like, okay, so execution level implementation people, yeah, there's concern for like, depending on your level of expertise, like concerns about like, what are people going to do moving forward for jobs and all that. But even from a leadership perspective, I mean, like, okay, at a certain point, if I published a chart a few weeks ago, it's the reasoning engine is just going to be beyond what humans are can process. So they're already using generative AI to, I believe it's generative AI, application of generative AI. I'm specific because this is my industry. This is what my book about. So sometimes it's a machine learning based AI, and sometimes it's generative AI, and the way those are built are totally different. But they're predicting breast cancer 4 years earlier than a doctor could ever predict it. So that's what I'm talking about, like the level of like cognition, or the level of like reasoning is very quickly going to be far past what we can do. So then it's going to be a matter of like listening, like really just knowing how to ask the right questions and how do you check it. And there's so many things. That's, I think, why Elon Musk is like back up, saying a lot, because it's like, okay, how do you QA? How do you check something if the reasoning is like so far beyond ours? How do we check to make sure that what it says is even correct? We can't. So it's like we're living in science fiction, I think.
Yeah, it does feel like that, doesn't it? Again, there's so many philosophical kind of things. I mean, we could probably talk all day, literally, and probably all night about all the various kind of philosophical things here. But that's it's fascinating to think that, okay, if I bring an AI, ChatGPT, Perplexity, whatever, to my next meeting, because we're tussling with this particular business challenge, and we can't, as humans or part of the management team, we can't really see clearly what the answer might be, but let's bring the AI in and see whether the AI can give us some insights. That would still work, though, wouldn't it?
Oh my gosh, yes, you got to do that. Is that it's like odd to me because people aren't doing that. But like every time I do a call, I use Fathom, right? It's free. They give me a transcript. I take the transcript. I learn from the transcript. So like I'll find, actually, that tool I was telling you about, CastMagic, it hooks up straight to Zoom. And then every single like conversation you have, you can like repurpose it into like a million different pieces of content. But the point is that like, okay, sometimes I'll be putting together, I don't know, someone gives me a really complex scenario, and like I'm thinking through it myself, and I'll just use ChatGPT to like help me really pick apart, like, okay, we could, this scenario, like there's so much lack of clarity, and okay, we actually have like 3 different pathways here. So we really need to prioritize and use ChatGPT to just help, kind of talk and argue with me against this conversation, to like as a second point of view is what a good way to use. So like you could use it as a brainstorming tool. You have a conversation and then you take it out and you take the transcript and then like argue with ChatGPT about it. And like, you see what I'm saying? Like there's a lot of uses.
There is. Really, really interesting. I mean, when you were creating the book, when you were writing the book, was there a core theme? Because as we've explored here, we've scratched the surface of many of the concepts that you cover there. Was there a core theme or a core, I guess, kind of desire from you to solve a particular challenge or a particular issue?
Yeah.
Was there something right at the heart of it all?
Yeah, there is. So I have been developing strategy since I got out of college, so almost 20 years. I have a engineering degree, actually. I've been doing marketing for about 20 years, but I was in the engineering and technology fields. And back in 2012, I don't know, you probably remember big data.
I certainly do.
Big data, me too. Of course, that was like heyday. It was so perfect. I did market research and I was like, okay, this is heyday. But vendors, you know what I'm saying? They also saw this as a heyday, and they were like, they had technology, Hadoop, and there was Hadoop vendors, and they were basically like, there was so much hype that like a lot of companies were buying these vendor solutions that they actually didn't need, that the use case, it didn't make any sense for what their needs were. And what happened is that the whole thing kind of fell on its face. And the vendors got a very bad reputation because there was so much hype. They sold based on the hype. And then, of course, they didn't get the companies didn't get the results. Big data became like this kind of like bad word, rightfully so. And so what is the solution to that? Well, obviously for me, as a person who's been doing technical strategy for 20 years, is to take a strategic approach. And I was doing strategy then, and I'm doing it now. So it's like, okay, what is an approach we can take for our data and AI projects, initiatives, products, programs, or projects so that they are basically future-proofed and like high risk, low reward. So how do you go about that process? I have a framework called the STAR framework, and survey the industry, see the use cases that are out there, see how other companies are leveraging, how are they getting competitive advantage, make yourself aware. Take stock, look at all the resources you have. What data do you have available? What people you have available? What are like any sort of limitations, kind of like a SWOT analysis or something. Like just take stock of the inventory you have in your company. Assess, here's what you have sitting here. Where's the like quick win? Where's the low hanging fruit against what's available to you across the market, and do like select an optimal use case based on, for what you have available to you right now, instead of like making a multi-million-dollar purchase or something like that. Like, no, start with like a smaller project if this is new, and like make sure it's really, really the right use case, gonna deliver results, and then build the technical strategy, and then build the recommendations and the architecture. Have a technical people come in and build the actual architecture and all that stuff, that's needed to actually execute. But this process, the STAR framework, so the R is for recommendations, this process, it safeguards business decision makers, really. And so one of the big things I did this for sharing this is, one, like, I just don't want what happened with the big data thing to happen again. I think it's not right for anyone involved. And two, I wanted to help data professionals level up, because I come from that background. I had a job as a data professional, a long time ago, but I've been working with data my whole life. And I wanted to help level people up from like the execution level to like a place where they're thinking more strategically, because I think, especially now with AI, it's very, very important. I don't know if are you using ChatGPT to analyze data, because that's another thing that it's just absolutely incredible for. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely is. The little MyGPT of data analyst in ChatGPT, one of the OpenAI's kind of standard little GPTs, is just incredible. Graphs, tables, it just gives you multiple options going forward that you would never normally even understand were there, which is so powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, so just identify things. That's it's identifying like almost revenue. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, is like his product. I'm like, you're actually just opening up new streams of revenue that people didn't even know existed, because they couldn't identify that segment. They couldn't identify it like a human wouldn't, but it's there. And so long as you can tap into it, there's so many use cases. But the thing that was with the book is just like helping others level up, because I think that it's important moving forward for people to understand, like, but also helping business owners like have that framework have that strategic, kind of know what to look for. So that when they hire someone, they don't get sucked into the hype, because, people have to feed their kids, and it's sad if they make bad investments and lose money. I just don't like that. So.
For the higher and greater good. Yeah, absolutely. How do people get hold of a copy of the book then, Lillian? Because I want to get this into as many hands as possible.
You're so kind and thoughtful. Thank you. I have a landing page on my website. If you go to data-mania.com and then /book, it will take you to the page, or you could just go to Amazon UK. It'll be released on January 5th, and it'll be actually in the bookstores. Like you're in UK, it'll be there in the bookstores. So it's a Wiley book, and it's called The Data and AI Imperative: Designing Strategies for Exponential Growth.
Wonderful. We'll make sure that we add the link into the description of this episode. Yes, before we publish. So, Lillian, I'm very conscious of your time. You have many more interviews and things to do, and lots to be happening. So I'm going to obviously let you go. But thank you so much for sharing your kind of thoughts and ideas with us. There were the 3 or 4 things which I'm going to highlight in the show notes that you promised we would be covering, and you got them in, which is amazing.
You're such a gracious, you're so kind. Neil, thank you for having me on. And really, as a person, I appreciate you. I can tell you're good people. And I hope we can have more conversations and partnerships in the future.
That would be wonderful. Lillian Pierson, thank you very much.